Boy, I remember it vividly. It was 1985. We got good report cards. I have an older brother, and my mom took us to get a cassette, and we could pick. And I picked Thriller, and it might have been 86. 85, 86. But I was young, 7. I picked Thriller, and my brother picked Born in the USA. And we got home and listened to Born in the USA, and I can remember thinking I picked the wrong album.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and we have another friendship episode. That's right, March is Friendship Month here at Set Listing Bruce, and I have Chris and Brian joining me. Welcome, guys.
Thank you very much for having us.
Hey, Jesse, thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is wonderful. I love this. This is neither one of you have been on the show before. I put the call out via Twitter, and you guys like, hey, we can talk. So, Chris, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it. Yeah, so just turned 40 this past year. Brian and I actually met in college, and I guess we can get into that in a bit. But big Boss fan, just like everybody else probably listening out today. And Brian really was the one who hooked me on the Springsteen when we were in college. So this was like late 90s, early 2000s. And, Brian has a wealth more knowledge than I do on the Boss himself. But as, we've been friends for now, 20 plus years, Springsteen has really been one of the big center points of our friendship. And it's been a really cool way for us to get to see each other because we live in different towns. I live in South Florida now, and Brian's up in Chicago, and I've traveled around for work quite a bit over the last 10 or 11 years. But no matter what happens when Bruce goes on tour, we pick a date or 2 or 3 and we are there.
That is great. That is awesome. It also appears you may be a sports fan, Chris.
Yeah, I am. I actually work in sports, so that's been a big part of my life and a big part of the reason I've traveled for the last 10 years or so for work.
Oh, good. We may have to hear more about that. All right, Brian, how about your elevator pitch?
Yeah, well, my name's Brian Murphy. I grew up in Cleveland, and went to Miami University in Ohio, where I met Chris. So, about 22 years I spent in Ohio. And then after I graduated, I moved to Chicago. Met my wife. I'm a teacher. I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a 2-year-old daughter. That is, it's really interesting that I'm now like passing Bruce down to a new generation. My kids went to a theater camp last week, and they all got to sing one song. And my oldest son, who's 7, sang Ghosts. And my youngest son sang what he calls Shaq and LeBron. It's really shackled and drawn. So it's fun. Like I've gone through having him passed down to me to now being the guy that's passed down. And one thing I'll say about Chris is that like we were gonna be really good friends anyways. But what Bruce has allowed us to do is just to connect, so many more times than we would have otherwise, of him coming into town to see me or me going into his town to see him. So we were already great friends before we realized that Bruce was something that we seriously had in common. But it's really allowed us to get together so many more times than we would have otherwise.
That's great. I love that story. By the way, Ghost is not a song you would think that they would sing, so that's well done, right?
Yeah, he told me that the kids in the class were not on board because it's a very long song.
Yes.
And that's true. I think it's about 5:50, right? So
Yeah.
he's like, I think they were bored at the end, Dad.
That's all right. Sing your own music. You got to sing your own song. That is awesome. So, okay, I'm telling you right now, I need to have both of you on separately so we can do a regular episode because I'm fascinated by this. The growing up and finding, kind of music, what led to you, especially you mentioned, Brian, that, you're now, your children will be a third generation, which is so cool. I've had a couple of second generations on the show. So that's very cool. But I'll start with you, Brian. When did you discover Bruce and what about his music spoke to you?
Boy, I remember it vividly.
Okay.
It was 1985. We got good report cards. I have an older brother. And my mom took us to get a cassette and we could pick. And I picked Thriller. And it might have been 86. 85, 86. But I was young, 7. I picked Thriller. And my brother picked Born in the USA. And we got home and listened to Born in the USA. And I can remember thinking I picked the wrong album. So it was, I think like a lot of people my age, it was Born in the USA. I also remember at that time not loving Tunnel of Love. Like it was probably too mature for me.
Yes.
So, and then the band broke up and like that didn't even mean a whole lot to me because I was young. So the first time I ever saw the band was at Richfield Coliseum. No, not the band. First time I ever saw Bruce was in Richfield Coliseum with, the quote unquote other band.
Yeah.
And that was probably like step 2 in my, like, oh man, this is something that's kind of like touching my heart.
Right.
I can remember me and my brother, my mom took us, we were super young. So everyone loved us because we were so young. And we walked down to the concourse. We were in the last row and we walked down to the concourse for the final song of the night, which I think was Working on the Highway. And I remember him using his, people aren't going to be able to see me, but like using his guitar as a jackhammer.
Right.
And, people were dancing all over the place. And I had never like been to a concert. Right. So it was like amazing. And then, so it was after that we went backward and we got like The River, Darkness, Nebraska, Born to Run, all the others. So yeah, Born in the USA was my starting point. And that first concert was like the next level. Then we went backward and then it was just on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. It snowballed. So how about you, Chris?
Yeah, so my story's a little bit different because my story really started when I was, call it like 18, 19 in college, and I met Brian. And here I meet this guy who, we joined the same fraternity, and all of a sudden I'm like, this guy's obsessed with Bruce Springsteen. Like, what's the deal? And, I was a casual Bruce fan. I grew up going to a lot of shows just in general, not Springsteen shows. But so, Brian really introduced me to him, and I really got into it. And I would say for me, Jesse, similar to you, it was The Rising that really got me started on it. And my first Springsteen concert story, which is, I'm not quite sure what show that was for Brian, but we saw him in Chicago at US Cellular Field, and it was pretty cool. We were probably the 8th car in the parking lot to tailgate that day, and we got in there, and I was so jacked up. At that point, I had not seen him. Kind of knew what set lists were. Waiting to hear Rosie, just like the epitome for a first concert. But what was so special about it, and what is probably the most memorable thing to me about all my Bruce shows to this day, is I had gotten to become friends with a guy in the radio industry, and he knew Little Stevie's old manager. So I surprised Brian, and the guy hooked us up with backstage passes to that show. And on my first show, we actually went backstage and met Stevie. which was pretty special. And your fans won't be able to see it, but I've got this picture on my desk to this day, which I ultimately got him to sign. He was gracious enough to sign. So it's one of the coolest and most special pieces I own. But I met Stevie on my first show with Brian, and then that trickled down, and we've now seen him, 12 times between us. And actually, Brian, I was thinking about this because we were chatting before, but it should have been 13. We actually missed the show because on the Rising tour, when Clarence had the eye issue, that show got canceled, and we ended up not being able to see him. So it would have been one more.
That's I have a theory that no matter when you become a fan, you're always chasing the shows you didn't get to see. Like, I had a guy on the show that talked about seeing him, around the time period. He did not say he was there at the night, where I saw the future of rock and roll, but he had seen something around that time. And he said he looked over to his date at that night and said, "We're seeing something magical. This guy's going to be something great." But he says, "But I think now I missed all those shows with Steel Wheel and everything. Like, if I'd just known before, I could have seen all those shows." And I'm like, and here I am looking. My first show was 2002. So I'm like, gosh, I can't believe I missed the reunion tour, the Born in the USA tour, all those things. And so I think no matter when you go, much like when you miss an extra point, you chase it the rest of the game. Yep. I think that's how we all do about shows.
Right. That's why this live series has been so amazing too, right?
Yeah.
Because it's finally, we've been given the opportunity to hear these legendary shows that we've either never heard or heard in terrible quality.
Yeah.
And obviously nothing is like being there, but at least you have an opportunity to hear, like what everybody's been talking about.
Absolutely. And I think they've done a great job of releasing in all the different eras, so that, I just, one of the shows I do once a month is a guy named Terry Smith, who does a Music Talks podcast, fun podcast. You pick a song for every decade you've been alive, and that's what he uses to discuss your life. So like, I was born in 59, so I would pick a song in 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 on. So he and I get together once a month and we talk about the archive series. So I'm listening to, the Wrecking Ball, and I, just enjoying how much that, which made me laugh, Shackled and Drawn, right, is just a great song live.
Yes.
And did your son rewrite the lyrics so it was a parody?
He just kept saying LeBron. Again, I grew up in Cleveland, so I still root for all their teams, and my kids like LeBron.
Yeah.
And then it just came to me. I was like, yeah, it's called Shaq and LeBron.
That's I now want someone to do a parody of that. And, that's hey, Weird Al, if you're listening, right? That would be good. Yeah. So Chris, if you can, send me a copy of the photo. And when I send the episode up, I always have to have artwork, and that'll be the artwork for this episode. So everyone looking, you can go, that was the show. Had you met anyone in the band before, Brian?
No, I had never met anyone in the band before that. We have since. And Chris, I don't know, we ran into Max in the lobby on the way to meet Stevie that day.
I left that part out. Yeah.
So I hadn't. I waited, for the Rising tour. It was a true GA. So get here early and get as close as you can. So I did the 18-hour wait in Cleveland. It was night 4 of the tour. So I had seen a show with my elbows on the stage, and Patty gave me a guitar pick after the show. I know I'm sounding really crazy now that I still have, but I had never met anybody prior to that. So it was really like a cattle call, right? We came through. He was cool, but like we came through, take a picture. You know, did you do the book?
Yes. I was just going to say the same thing, right?
Okay.
Like the book, you know, it's
Exactly.
next. And,
Yes.
I always say that, cause I've shared this story on the podcast. You know, I practiced all the way from Dallas to Austin about what was I going to say. And I know he didn't hear what I said, but I've said multiple times, I needed to say it more than I needed him to hear it. And
Yeah.
it was enough for me. I thought it was just enough that one, he was doing that, and you know, and it took hours. So he had to stand there and, you know, smile, and, you know, he was, you know, good to meet you, and kind of, you know, on there. But yes, I
Yeah.
imagine.
Right. It's crazy looking back. I don't even remember what year that was. But like I didn't have the money to go see him on Broadway.
Yeah.
And like meeting him during that book tour was the last time I ever saw him.
Yeah.
You know, and it's probably going to be another year. That's got to be, you know, 5-6 years. I don't know. I would have never guessed it at that time. You know, that I wouldn't see him live again for another 5-6 years.
So an episode that's come out already during this Friendship Month, I had 4 ladies joining me, and 2 of them were at Light of Day in 2020, like February.
Wow.
And they were like, they were talking about, little did we know.
Yeah,
like,
right.
You know, we're at Light of Day. We're just, everything's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I had a similar experience. February 12th, my son's birthday is February 10th. And so February 12th, we bought Dallas Maverick tickets, and the 3 of us, my wife and him and I, all went, and we, you know, we paid a little extra to get decent seats, you know, and we're celebrating his, you know, it was his 31st birthday. And so we're just kind of having a great night. And, you know, we talk about that every once in a while. No way, while we're watching, you know, we're watching Luka Doncic, and, you know, we're going, who would have thought that in just a month later, literally the world would change?
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah. Did so you kind of mentioned this a little bit, but for the record, I always say that the amount of times you've seen Bruce live is not a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are, because your economic circumstances, your age, where you live can all dictate that. Someone who, you know, was in college in the middle 70s, who lives in Jersey or Philly, you know, are
Right.
they're, you know, they're, you know, they're already ahead of the curve, while someone like me growing up in Louisiana, you know, like no idea.
Right.
So, but for the record, how many times have you seen him? And Brian, let's go. You first.
If I count the book deal, it's an even 50. I've seen
Okay.
49 shows.
Nice. Good.
So
And
Yeah.
Chris?
I'm slightly less, but I feel good about my number, which is 14. And again, of 14 of my shows, 12 of them were with Brian. So
That's nice.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah. And then another thing to add, Jesse, too, is like one conversation that Brian and I always have, which I'm sure your listeners have had too, is just, you know, how do we get to see him overseas? How do we get to that point where we plan a trip to go see him? And that's, you know, that's sort of the pinnacle of what we want to do at some point. You know, go see him in Spain, go see him in Germany, wherever it might be. But that's something that Brian and I talk about a lot, and hopefully that's on the horizon, maybe 22 or 23.
Yeah. You know, Chris, what's funny is we were standing around, this is over a year ago, just kind of sitting around and talking about, you know, the kind of talks you have, like, oh, if you won the lottery, what would you do? And I said, oh, if I won the lottery, I would go to I would follow Bruce on every stop on his tour.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I've said
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And Linda looked at me. Linda's my wife, like, well, you'd be gone from us a long time. I'm like, no, you could come.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to the shows. You could, you know, hike and sightsee and everything. I'm not saying you need to go, you know,
Right.
and I'm just telling you asked what I would do if I could. And when he was down during the High Hopes tour and the Wrecking Ball, that kind of High Hopes tour, where he toured Australia and New Zealand, and you like, God, not only are they great shows, but you could be that beautiful country. You see like the Lord of the Ring movies, how beautiful the thing is, and like it's a part of the world a lot of us have never gone to. And the owner of the company I was working for at the time, you know, we're multi-millionaire, and he was in his late 60s. And every Saturday, he's still coming into the office, which is why he's a millionaire and I'm not, maybe. But all I could think was, we'd sit there and go, what if am I his age and I have that kind of money? I'm like making a summer of Australia, New Zealand. I'm like, okay,
Right.
I'm going to take some
Oh,
time
yeah.
off. You can catch me. We'll Zoom calls, but I'm taking an extended vacation to go see this.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. 100%.
Jesse, Brian, I'm trying to remember what show this was, but I think it was DC at the Verizon Center, and this would have been probably 2010 or 2011, I think. We ran into a guy who was from overseas, and I don't remember his name, don't remember much about him, but the one thing that I do remember is I offered to buy him a drink at the bar, and he told Brian and I, he goes, I never drink during the day of a show. The guy had been to over 100 shows,
right.
And whether you want to have a drink or not, but I just remember him saying to me, like, I travel overseas, I spend all this money, I go into every concert dead sober because I want to make sure I want to remember everything he does, everything Stevie does, everything Mills does. So, yeah.
I love that story. On the other hand, the first time I went to the 2002 show, we had, nosebleed seats, right? And so it was me, my wife, and then two of our best friends, Denise and Andrea. They're sisters, and we've gone to tons of shows together, the four of us. And Linda's like, okay, we're going to go get something to drink. Do you want a Diet Coke? Nope. What? I don't want to have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the show. This is the first time I'm going to go, right? Nope. Linda's like, I've never seen you. I'm like, no. And it was, so I totally get that. My fun story is he was here in Dallas on the River Tour. So it'd be 2016. And Sunday night, he was in Oklahoma City. And the same night, WrestleMania was in Dallas, Texas at Jerry World. The Death Star, the AT&T Stadium where the Cowboys play. And my son chose to not go to WrestleMania to go to the Oklahoma show with me. He had never been to a Bruce show. He says, I want to go with you, Dad. Let's go together. We'll make it a boys' night. And which tells you, after the show, he was like, that was fun. I'm like, okay, do you want to go get a drink or do you want to do something? I just think I want to go to the hotel. I'm tired.
Yeah.
It's like,
I know.
And usually he's always like, 2-3 in the morning. Come on, Dad, let's go to the bar. And so anyway, that Tuesday, Bruce was playing at the arena there where the Mavericks play, right? And so we were at just a few blocks away. We were at the Rock and Roll, like a cafe, right? Hard Rock Cafe. And we were a bunch of us meeting up, people that had listened to the show and everything. And so I was talking to a guy who actually is the drummer of the local Dallas Springsteen cover band, Thunder Road. And so he and I were visiting, and this guy comes over with a huge WrestleMania jersey on with this strong Irish accent saying, excuse me, I won't try to do an accent. Were you talking about Bruce Springsteen? I'm like, yeah, Oh, what's going on? I said, oh, well, he's playing tonight. You are kidding. He said, I have tickets when he's coming to Dublin. We were here for WrestleMania. My flight's leaving tonight. And it was like, he was like, wow. How could I have effed up so much? Like, I could have just stayed one extra day and thrown a Bruce show in there, right?
Oh, that's an all-time fail.
Yes, I said, I would be calling American Airlines or wherever, like, okay, you don't understand. Like, like you have to change me just a day, So, yeah, that's great. You got other shows, stories from shows you want to share with me?
Yeah, we got plenty.
Good, I love it.
I'll tease this one for Brian, but we saw Bruce at MetLife back-to-back nights, 2012. Two great things about that show. One was, for the folks that were there, that was the weather delay night. And he played until, I don't know what time, he kept coming back. They're going to shut us down. They're going to shut us down. No, they didn't. They let him play. But that was a special show. And it was his mom's birthday. I can't remember.
It was his birthday.
Oh, sorry. It was Bruce's birthday. Yes. It was Bruce's birthday. His mom was there. He came out on stage. She came out on stage. That was a special show. But then, Brian, you want to talk about the St. Louis show, which ended up being
the River?
Yeah.
Or 08?
No, I'm talking 08.
Give them both, though. I'd love to hear them both.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, that birthday show was amazing because no one had any idea how long they'd play or be allowed to play. I mean, they came out at least 2 hours late. Like we had started tailgating for a normal start time, as many people did. So that crowd was real loose when they walked on stage, in 08, we went, my years might not be right, on the Magic Tour. We went out to St. Louis, and right, Chris, was it 08?
It was either 07 or 08, but yeah.
Okay. We were, we're young. We were 28. We were so pumped. We upgraded to first class. For me, it's the only time I've ever ridden in first class. We went to the riverboat. We made some money that day, right? And then we went to the show, and that ended up being one of the flag shows of that entire tour, where he did. He opened it up with And Then She Kissed Me. He did Little Queenie.
Oh,
he
wow.
did like 4 covers during the show.
He did Mountain of Love. He did he did Rendezvous. He did a bunch of stuff that I'd never heard, and I was blown away.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Chris worked at St. Louis University during the River Tour.
Yeah.
And so that was the smallest venue that he played on that tour. It's like 8,500 people. Right, Chris?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we got in there early because he literally worked there, and we were walking around, and again, we met Stevie, and we saw Jakey walking around, and that was like, when we saw Jake, he was literally just in the hallway. So like the meeting was a lot better than meeting Steve or Bruce when it was like the cattle call. And one great thing about that was we were walking down the concourse, and his guitar tech Kevin was walking past us,
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, there was literally no one there. And I was like, Kevin. And I think he was so surprised that anyone even knew who he was. And he was like almost excited to talk with us too.
Oh, that's great. I love that story.
Not that people don't know who he is, but we're, again, in Bruce crowds, like me and Chris are young.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he was surprised that these two, 39-year-old guys at that time, I recognize him. All right. So anyways, not to ramble, but
no. Let me interrupt just for a moment. Keep that thought. But I'm going to say this later and it won't make sense. When Chris was at that first show, my son, we're driving home the next day, and he said, I don't know who that is Bruce throws the guitar to, but the Cowboy Receiver should catch that well, Dad.
Yes.
If
you're watching, it's amazing. I don't know if I've ever seen him drop one. So long story short, but I do think people listening will like this. We get, 10 minutes from showtime, right? And we get to the point where we are outside the door that the entire band is in. And I'm saying to Chris, we can hear Jake inside this room, like warming up, meet me in the city tonight. And I'm saying to Chris, I'm like, this.
All right, Brian, I think you've muted accidentally because I couldn't hear that. Can you hear him, Chris?
I can't hear you, Chris. You're on mute. Security comes and gets us and pulls us into like what I would
go back just a few minutes here because I couldn't hear you either.
Oh.
So go to you could hear Jake doing Meet Me in the City.
Okay, so yeah, and me and Chris are like, this is going to happen. Like these guys are going to open this door and they're going to walk right past us, and we're going to be standing right here, and it's going to be, we're going to get this close to every member. But like 1 minute before they come out, security came and got us, and they took us into what I would describe it as like main control or a drunk tank, whatever. And it was glass windows, plexiglass windows. So I'm on, go. So instead of having this amazing moment, we actually had to sit in like soundproof glass and watch what would have happened. But we couldn't, and just be silent. And they came out, we filmed it. I can send you the film of it. And, they huddled up like a team and said their prayer and then went out. And it was like, it was still awesome because we were backstage with the E Street Band,
Yeah. We were 30 feet away basically and got to see their pre-show routine. And that was something that I will never forget.
Oh, I think that is cool. And then did you guys rush to your seats?
Yes. Yes. Then we ran around into the Jeep.
We didn't get in the pit that night, I remember.
Yeah.
We waited in line, but we didn't get in.
Mm-hmm.
So
that is a great story.
Yeah, it was something else. What other ones do we have? I went out to the final night of the reunion tour with my brother and some cousins, and that was not so much a story, but what's weird about that is that we're talking about, shows 21 years later. Like we all walked out of the Garden thinking that was maybe the end of them. Go ahead.
No, I just was going to tell you, I had a guy that was on the show late last year. We had connected through LinkedIn. It's the only guy I've ever had through LinkedIn that, oh yeah, I'm a Bruce fan. I'd love to be on the podcast. And he said the exact same thing. He said he was sitting there in the middle of the reunion tour. And I think he may have been Madison Square Garden, but wherever it was. And he said in his mind, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the pinnacle of my Springsteen fandom. They may every 2 or 3 years do a reunion, like a greatest hits tour, like the Eagles do, or like the Stones do. But we, this is it. He said, and he says, if I could go back and tell that guy, you have no idea what's coming. The Rising, Magic, Seeger Sessions.
I know.
A book tour. Broadway, Ghosts, Letter to You,
right?
Western Stars. Like he says, you would never believe.
I know
that was just phase 1 of his life.
I know. It's amazing how the second act, 99 on is how well it stacks up to the first act, and we're all, everybody's nostalgic about Born to Run and how great everything is, but not everything, but man, there is some of his best work has been post getting the band back together, without question.
So I'm going to give you a Sophie's choice. And I had this very early in the podcast. Me and a guy debated, and I had said that I would take a live show that starts with all the songs from Tunnel of Love going forward. And he said, I will take a show that's Darkness and before. So both of us exclude Born in the USA. So which would you choose?
Man, that's tough. You're getting a lot more material. You've got a lot more options for him to come up with. I would probably choose Darkness and Before, just because of the rarity at which I've heard that music. One thing, I know we're going to talk about like songs that we would love to hear live, but like lately he has really given us he's closed a lot of checklists for a lot of people, right? I would have bet my life I would never see New York City Serenade live.
Yeah.
And that would have been my number one without question.
Yeah.
I like the rearrangements. Like if he played E Street Shuffle the way that he played it in Hammersmith.
Yeah.
If I could go and arrange the songs and play this version and this version, then I would take, Darkness and Before.
Okay. How about you, Chris?
I'd say the same thing, just because of the rarity of it, and me having gotten into Springsteen, really late '90s. So having that stuff prior would be really special to see.
Oh, I totally agree. I think of all the hearing like songs from Magic that I only went to one Magic show, so and maybe that's part of it is so I only got to see Girls in Their Summer Clothes live once. I never heard I'll Work for Your Love live. As much as I love the River Tour, I would have loved for a few more of those outtakes. And then like when you think about the Promise box set, he did very few of those. It would be great. I know all of us would do a Tracks live,
right?
Like just pick songs from Tracks and build a set list. That would and do that on video on demand. Yes, we would be putting our money down. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Me and my brother have even joked if a band came out and their entire catalog was Tracks, they'd probably end up in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
That's how good it is.
I think so. Yeah. And then, and the rumor is right. He says Tracks 2 is on the way and you'll see. I do got to give you thoughts. And Chris, let's start with you. Thoughts on Letter to You?
I absolutely love it. It's unbelievable. I mean, Brian and I have a little bit, I think, of a different opinion just on like what songs are our favorites. If I Was a Priest is, I think, some of his greatest work. I think for me, it's like an absolutely iconic song on that album. Ghost is amazing. Letter to You is amazing. Yeah. And just to segue a bit about our friendship though, but like album release day, the night before, I'm on Twitter. I'm like, is this going to drop? What's going on? I'm like sending Brian messages. Like we're kind of going back and forth, and we talked at like, I don't know, it was way after my bedtime, but I remember being like, hey, this is going to happen tomorrow. Like this is real. And that's kind of like a total, Springsteen freak here, but having that in the middle of everything that's gone on, this year, last year has been just something really special. You got that in October, been basically 6 months, and since most of us have been working from home and just a challenging time, but like that was just such a bright spot in 2020, and it's just an amazing piece of work. I mean, even what Nils said, I think I was reading an article with him talking about how this is some of his best work, and coming from a guy that's been with him as long as he has, like, it really is. It's just a really special album.
Yeah, what I said a lot on the podcast, and excuse me, I don't know y'all's politics, but I said if I could get a new Springsteen album in October, a new president in November, maybe 2020 would not be the crappiest year ever. And it is. But Brian, you tell me your thoughts.
Yeah, I love it too. Here's a good topic that I think you could explore, on a future show. If you look at like over his career, songs that start an album and songs that end an album. So your bookends, right? And there's a lot of like crazy epic, Thunder Road and Jungle Land, Badlands and Darkness. Okay, so like I think that's clearly an important thing for him.
Yeah.
And I think that 1 Minute You're Here and oh no, we're having the brain fart we talked about.
I'll See You in My Dreams.
I'll See You in My Dreams. Bookend an album as complimentary as any he's put out. Like, I don't think they're better songs than Thunder Road and Jungle Land, but the topics being as similar as they are, and just how when I put 1 Minute You're Here on, and I was like, this is the opening track, I was like, oh man, where are we going?
Yeah.
This is bad. And But then Letter to You ends it with the exact same material, and you are totally happy. Like you feel better, like you're more at peace, with the same loss that you felt terrible about 50 minutes earlier. So whatever, I think that's a topic that's interesting to explore. That was the first thing that I texted Chris after I got done with the album, was bookended perfectly.
That is a great discussion. September was the 5th anniversary of me doing the podcast, and one topic we did is I had 3 or 4 guests who've been on the show before, and we ranked our favorite 5th tracks on an album. And
that's cool.
So we already planned next September we'll do top 6 that tracks
that's
just
great.
to celebrate. So I agree with that. I don't know why, but I feel like If I Was a Priest is what Outlaw Pete wanted to be.
Yeah.
And
interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that album. My wife is a casual fan at best. And she always wants to see the documentaries because she loves documentaries of almost any subject. And when she was watching this, she's like, I like that song. Oh, I like that song. And we've gone on a couple of road trips and we've played it, and she, just loves almost every song and just is really touched by it. And I do think it's the only time I got mad, Chris and Brian, is someone on Facebook posted, Bruce needs to quit putting out new work. He's destroying his legacy. And I went, F you, dude. First off,
Right.
I don't know what Bruce could do to destroy his legacy short of something incredibly, in his personal life come out.
Right.
I mean, he went on a shooting spree, but it's okay if you don't like the new album, but first off, you can't diminish. But I think, and I agree with you, I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm just saying it's pretty damn high quality for someone 69, 70 when they're recording it. And you're not sitting on your laurels. You're not doing Darkness Part 2. You're not doing, Born to Run Part 2. Western Stars is totally different from anything he's done. And then Letter to You, he comes back. It's a solid E Street band, but it's different. And it's covering themes that, Maureen Van Sant said, she says, I don't think it's the band saying goodbye. I think it's just the band kind of looking back at their life and being happy.
Right. I agree with that. This is where we are right now, and these are the topics that we're going to talk about because this is our life.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you were talking about the guy that you were talking to walking out of the garden and that he thought maybe every 3 years, they would do a reunion. I never thought that.
Oh, really?
Like, I really thought this is it, or they're going to do new stuff. He just, to me, was never a guy that was going to live, in the 2000s based off of what he had done in the 70s. He's too intelligent. Burnin' Train is another track on that new album, though, that's like, you just know it's going to be amazing live.
Till I watched him on Saturday Night Live, my money was, I think Meet Me in the City is a great opening song. I just love that. And so I was thinking I could just see Burning Train, just him going on stage. And then when they did Ghost on Saturday Night Live, and I know the sound wasn't as perfect as it could be, I was like, okay, I could see them opening with Ghost now, and I would not be disappointed.
No, either one is fine by me. The crowd. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I was going to segue off of that just slightly, but Jesse, Brian and I, the one conversation we have, especially the last few months, is like, to take this to the next step, is like, that first show, how much would you pay to be there? Like, what is that going to cost to see him live that first night? And what is that opening song going to feel like? That is going to be one of the most epic things in music.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you do feel like if they would do a pay-per-view, right? Like we would just all over the world, okay, here's my 1995 or whatever it is, and we'll watch. I can only imagine the emotional tears in 2022 when we get another tour, and whether it's the first show or the 5th show or the 20th show in the tour, but it's the first time one of us has seen it, right? You're there, you're either in the pit, you're in your seat, and they come on stage. I just don't know if I'll stop crying.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And for me, it's like, I'm just going to be there on Twitter, just checking for set list updates, like, just scrolling through what did he open with, what came second,
Wherever it is in the contiguous United States, Chris, we're going to be there.
Yeah.
All right. That's where this is where my podcast title came from. You're set listing, because you're not set listing. You're set listing as you're going through Twitter and social media, like, oh, damn it, I can't believe he's playing this, but I'm not there.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll give you one more show story, Jesse.
Please.
So Brian and I, we were living in Chicago at the time, and we drove up to Milwaukee. This was Rising. We saw him at Miller Park, and I think I'm going to get this story right. And we were in the car, and we were talking about what's he going to open with. And I believe his story's right, but I was like, you know what? I think he's going to open up with. Wait, I might be getting my shows confused here between the Cell and this, because he opened up the first show with Adam, and then what did he open up Milwaukee with, Brian?
I don't remember. Proof? I don't.
God, okay. Now I'm gonna have to go fact check myself here. This might be the most fake news story, but I'll have to come back with it.
No.
But anyway, I called what he opened up with, and I was like, holy crap, this is unbelievable. It was just like one of those moments. You're like, but to your point, like set listing is like, it makes the show that much more fun. What songs 1 and 2 are going to be, right? Like, what you're getting, generally speaking, as the tour progresses. Then it's like, what's he going to do 3, 4, 5, Yeah.
Have you guys ever gone to myBossTime.com?
No.
Okay, so write that down. This is a guy from Sweden. My Boss Time, he has a database, and you create a free account, and then you go through and you select what shows you've attended. And then behind the scenes, he calculates what percentage of the albums have you heard live? What are your rarities? What are your most common songs? What are, it's My Boss Time. And it is a rabbit hole that you will go down.
So I wish I would have known that prior to this call. I would have been a lot smarter on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's great.
For example,
No, they're all like, I can't leave.
Okay. Sorry.
That's all right. We're totally used to this. I just logged on real quick.
I just created my account while we were talking about it. I love it.
Yeah. Rebel, he's only played once. I got to see it. He's done Jump twice, and I got to see that once.
I actually just rewatched when Eddie died last year.
Yeah.
I watched that YouTube of him playing that, and I was like, what a performance. Like, that was just epic.
It really is. All right. So I've kept you guys almost an hour, and so I really appreciate that. What are some songs you're still chasing?
I'll let Brian go.
Okay.
I am still chasing Frankie, would be my number 1. I would love to hear The Wall. I think he played it in like Virginia Beach with the full band. I could be wrong on that one.
That is one of my rarities. I got to hear that, and I was so.
Oh, you did? Right.
Just so great.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like that. Was it like super emotional? To me, it strikes me as like, My City of Ruins always gets me, right?
Absolutely.
And to me, it's just kind of like that. Like just an emotional song. And then one that I think, obviously Letter to You, right? But I'm confident that I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
I'm not confident that I'll ever hear Western Stars, but I actually love Western Stars.
Yes, absolutely.
So those would be my top 3.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great choice. Chris, how about you?
Yeah, my stuff's going to be more of his solo stuff that he just doesn't play anymore. It's like, It's going to be more of like, Lucky Town, Better Days, like stuff like that I just have not gotten because of the time that I started following him. So it's going to be stuff off of that. I mean, Fire would be awesome. Never saw that.
Chris, that's actually a great call too. I didn't even go there. Not to interrupt you, I'd love to hear E Street Band playing more Lucky Town album type stuff.
Yeah, Better Days is one of my favorite songs, and so that's definitely on my list of I would love to hear him. Funny, the inaugural celebration, he does Land of Hope and Dreams, which is by far my favorite Springsteen song. And then they go, oh, and here's Justin Timberlake doing Better Days. I'm like, what? But different Better Days,
Yeah, not quite the same album.
No, not at all.
I'll give you one more.
And in between the two, we watched Bon Jovi's career end.
Oh wow!
Wow. Shots fired. I give you one more that is in that same era, but tougher than the rest.
Yes, that would be great. Yes.
Yeah, I mean I
love that song.
Just an epic song. Yeah, I think it's like north of 6 minutes. I mean, that's something that I would love to hear live.
Absolutely. All right. One last question, and then I'm going to let you guys go. I end every episode with the Mary question. So Jay Armstrong is an honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. He just recently retired. They spend 2 days breaking apart Thunder Road in the English class. They look at all the imagery and the lyrics, and they talk about themes Bruce is exploring. And at the end of the 2 days, he asks his class, does Mary get in the car? So, Chris, we'll start with you. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
Wow. I had no idea where this question was going. I'll say she does.
Okay. All right. Very nice. Do you want to show work?
Why, Chris? You got to explain your answer. So you think an English teacher in Philly is going to just accept a one-word answer?
No, not from a C student. Come on, take my hand, riding off the promise. I mean, I don't know. I think she does. I think the whole song speaks to it, and I feel like it's a good fitting. It's an end. It's an end that makes. It's an end that I want to believe. I'll leave it at that.
That's a good answer. Yes.
That is a good answer.
Yeah, I want to believe that she does. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I would like to believe that she does as well. And if I had more time to research it,
which we know you're going to do after this call.
Maybe I would believe that Mary manifests herself in other songs throughout the album in a different name. So maybe she is Wendy. Maybe she is the girl that Bruce is talking about going across the river. Okay. Because if that story is truly, if that album is truly that one long day, right, and Thunder Road is sunrise, then maybe she does get in the car and join him for that day. So I too will say yes.
So a couple things to think about. One, on Racing in the Street, she talks about being on her daddy's porch. One, is that the same porch that she, dances across?
Right.
And then someone's theory, I've heard two people now praise this theory, that Moonlight Motel is the end of their journey. That Mary gets in the car, they go down to California, they spend their life together, and that when he's pouring that shot, it's memory because Mary is now passed.
Wow.
That's deep.
Yeah.
That is deep.
So, I just want to share, if you do some research, Brian, you can always reach out to me and go, okay, let's record another. I got some theories I want to share. So I'm so glad. Chris,
Jesse, Brian, I want to redeem myself really quick.
Okay, sure.
The opening song that I guessed in Milwaukee was Candy's Room.
Very nice. Very nice.
So
good job.
I need to redeem myself before the end of this podcast.
You guys are perfect. You guys are welcome anytime. I love visiting with you guys. This was so great. Any final thoughts?
Just thank you. This is a lot. This was a lot of fun. It's really, it's really fun to just talk about this stuff with people that find it important. It's not the most important thing in the world, right? We're just talking about, a group of guys that play music, but it is important to us.
It is.
And so it's fun. This was a lot of fun, and I really, appreciate it.
Well, Brian, I loved having you on. Chris, how about you? Final thoughts?
No, just to be able to, send a guy a message on Twitter who, and then all of a sudden get a response and talk about friendship, talk about the boss, connect with like-minded people. And to Brian's point, which I think is really well said, it's definitely not the most important thing, but it's important to us. So.
Yeah. Do you guys want to share your Twitter handles or social media handles?
Sure. Mine is at Ohio Murphy.
Okay.
And mine is at Chris Bultinck, Bultinck.
Okay, good. All right, guys, I know I've kept you, but we're going to end with this. Out on this road tonight, I close my eyes and feel some friends around me in the early evening light. And the miles we have come and the battles won and lost are just so many roads traveled, so many rivers crossed. And I ask God for the strength and faith in one another, because it's a good night for a ride. Cross this river to the other side, my blood brothers. Chris, Brian, we are blood brothers. We are Springsteen siblings, and I appreciate you guys spending time with me.
Thank you so much.
Listeners.
Thanks, Jesse.
No problem. Listeners, you stay safe. Wash your hands. Remember to social distance. Wear an effing mask. Let's all be good to each other, because that's the only way we're going to get through this. For now, goodbye. We'll see you soon. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. We have a website, www.setlistingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Listing Bruce shirts as well as a Merry Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash, and right now who does, you can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. Set Listing Bruce is part of the Southgate Media podcast group. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.